coming up, his car would fly as the suspect barrels down the highway.
That donut was over 500 pounds. Criminals now live in constant fear.
And more, but first, these cops have found a heartwarming way to stop criminals, and you'll never guess why. Year after year, car theft just keeps going up, and nobody seems to know why. But one police station in Texas might have finally found the reason. Most criminals just never knew what it was like to be loved, so they have begun offering hugs instead of jail time to criminals. This man has just stolen a car after mugging a man on the street, sending him to the hospital. The cops promptly give chase, and after 4 long hours, it finally comes to an end. Once the cop gives him a hug, he gives the car back with tears in his eyes, saying he never meant to steal it. Then they let him go. Would you hug the cop? These cops are time travelers, and it changed the town forever. Sheriff Lachlan has worked at the Kansas PD for over 40 years, but even he still makes mistakes. Last month, he spent the entire police budget on a brand new Hellcat and took it home to Detroit to impress his friends. Little did you know, you can't have nothing in Detroit, and like every other Hellcat, it too was stolen. Upon hearing the news, state officials were livid and decided to pull all funding to his station. With no money and no cars, Lachlan knew the only way he was going to save his station was to ride a horse. Now, he and the rest of the deputies chase criminals around town like the good old days. Yeah! Surprisingly, due to his unusual methods, crime in the city has tanked over 40%, as criminals now live in constant fear of Sheriff Lachlan. That's because with all of the money they saved on gas, they can finally afford some brand new muskets? Why? Because this cop lost his license for drunken driving, but that doesn't stop him from saving his town from reckless drivers. Davis worked as a cop for over 14 years in his hometown of Castleberry, Florida. Though lately his job has gotten a whole lot harder. Since he isn't allowed to drive anymore, he has had to come up with his own methods of stopping suspects. When he gets a call, he runs to the scene and stands in front of their car, hoping that they don't run him over. Looks like it didn't work this time, and now Davis has to hold on for dear life as the suspect barrels down the highway. He should have just drove. Oh wait, you can't because...
Never park your car on the highway! This cop just found the hard way why his mother always told him to never park on the highway. One day, as he was pulling over an innocent victim to stash drugs on them, he was about to receive the shock of his life. This guy in the car forgot his driver's license. Score! Then, the unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a car was driving normally down the highway, but the cop remembered he was on the highway. As the cop watched him get closer, fastly, he knew he had to act. Why did I park my car in the middle of the road? He asked himself, but there was no time. He knew he had to jump out of the way of a moving car. Seconds later, the guy plowed into the police car illegally parked on the highway. Everybody was okay, except for the suspect, who died. But that's okay, because I will...
These cops were chasing this car when suddenly, disaster happened. Travis was on the run after robbing a bank, but no matter what he did, he just couldn't shake the cops. When he turned off his headlights and drove into oncoming traffic, he thought the cops had lost him, but only a few miles later, they found him yet again. Not knowing what else to do, he decided to cut up no hissing, but then tragedy struck. After narrowly avoiding a parked car, he clipped the guardrail, and his car went flying, bursting into flames. When the cops saw this, they hesitated at first, since he was a criminal. Despite this, they decided to put aside their differences and saved his life. Thanks to their brave efforts, Travis is now serving a life sentence. Still, I think those cops deserve a raise, since this man is a Jeep Wrangler, and he's about to wrangle all of them. This Jeep just broke the fence and was trying to escape, but they just called in the cavalry. Jeff, as the Jeep tries to escape, Jeff latches on and stops the Jeep in its tracks, leaving everyone stunned, and they all want to know how he did it. It's actually pretty simple. Jeff actually used to be a rodeo clown in northern South Carolina, but now that he's dedicated his life to helping the community, he returns the Jeep back to its pen to play with the other cows. The San Francisco police are destroying people's cars, and you'll never guess why. For years now, San Francisco has been the street race capital of America, and local residents have demanded that the cops do something about it. So they did. Since they can't catch up with them on the streets, they came up with another ingenious idea. When they spot a suspicious street racer's car, they write down the plate, steal it from their driveway in the middle of the night, and then crash it into a pole. But if that fails, they just take a skid. Now that their car is totaled, they can no longer street race, and the streets of San Francisco are now marginally safer. Talk about an epic victory royale. Do you think the cops are justified?
This cop just found the biggest donut of his life. Officer Radley was driving down the road when he saw something beautiful. There, in a field, was a giant whole wheat donut. Immediately, he slammed on his brakes and jumped out to get a better look. That's when he knew he had to confiscate it for evidence. But as he went to put it in his car, he realized the biggest mistake of his career. That donut was over 500 pounds. Despite that, he wasn't going to give up and began lifting the 1,000-pound donut, but it wouldn't budge. If he didn't lift that donut, he would let the whole police department down. As he lifted with all his might, his partner began cheering him on from the car, giving him the strength he needed to lift that 1,500-pound donut. That's right, he managed to pick it up and rolled it, all 2,000 pounds of it, back to the car. What a hero. This cop just stopped a gas station robbery. It was just like any old day at the gas station when suddenly a man in a black hoodie pulled out his blicky and demanded that the cashier give him all the money in the register or he was going to send him to Ohio. Just as the cashier was about to take the L, a hero appeared. There, out of the bathroom, came a cop. Everybody started cheering, knowing help had finally arrived. That's when Officer Samuel pulled out his yacht and started hitting the gritty. The criminal was doomed. He had L-Riz and nowhere to run, or so the cop thought. Well, he was getting skippity. The criminal was already out the door and long gone. Thankfully, as he was crossing the street, a stolen car slammed into him, sending him straight to the hospital. So that's how.
These cops broke into the wrong house, and you'll never guess why. While this may look like any old police raid, the truth is a lot funnier. Cops in Houston have recently began a new community policing initiative by breaking into their houses and connecting with the community face to face. As a result, over the past month, there has been a 2% decrease in home burglaries and a 900% increase in drug busts. After breaking into this one woman's house, she was able to share her opinion on drug possession. Even though the cops may have disagreed, the community is now more connected than ever at the local county jail. While some may question whether this is legal, others have praised the cops for bringing the community together. That's why.
Never let your pool turn green. You won't guess the deadly secret. Roscoe was a retired police officer in the state of Atlanta, hoping to spend his last days in peace. But his neighbors had other plans. Every day when he went to work, he came home to the sight of hundreds of kids in his backyard. Tired of having those filthy little nose pickers use it as a playground, he decided to tear up his backyard and replace it with a pool. But only a few days later, his house was flooded with strangers using his pool again. Enough was enough. Roscoe proceeded to dump 2,400 gallons of toxic waste into his pool to make sure that nobody else could use it. Unfortunately, he was not immune to the effects of his backyard brew and was rushed to the hospital a few hours later. Sadly, he didn't survive, but at least he doesn't have to deal with neighbors anymore. These cops are scammers and everybody's freaking out. After months of failing to meet their monthly quotas, this police station in Ohio was on the verge of bankruptcy. But then, Sergeant Ross came up with a devious plan. He decided to target his favorite victim, firefighters. When somebody parks their car on the street, they place a fake hydrant next to their car, activating the homing beacon of all vigilantes everywhere, who begin smashing the car to pieces. Then, the police swoop in and arrest all of them, including the driver. Unfortunately, those vigilantes were actually the volunteer fire department. So when Sergeant Ross's house mysteriously caught fire the following week, there was nobody to put it out. Oopsie. If you loved that video,
video, you'll like this one.